Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to Jacob Walks Over a Bridge. I'm Jacob. I'm currently walking over a bridge. And join me, won't you? On what I believe to be pending a future revival in 5 years after this gets picked up by some unknown entity. This might be the penultimate episode. And what better place to do this than over one of humanity's greatest achievements, the Queensboro Bridge, where this journey really started. Oh, it's hard to believe now. That was a lifetime ago, about 4 different apartments ago, one global pandemic ago. Back then, I was a young kid looking to buck the system and walk to work for 5 miles. And when there was nothing else interesting or entertaining to do while walking over the bridge, what better way to keep myself entertained than by talking to myself for 25 minutes nonstop? And then that continued on as a way to keep myself occupied during the pandemic. And then I forgot to remove my credit card from SoundCloud, so I got another year of the premium. So I was like, I got to do this again. And then it just kept building. And now at the end of the 4th season, this is the time to end it. Some shows don't necessarily know when to call it quits, and I think this is, I think I'm making an informed, well, I don't know if I'd say informed. Nothing's necessarily informing me besides my gut feeling. An informed gut a feeling informed by my gut that this is the time to do it. I remember in the pilot episode of this, I discussed Lost in some detail. How the pilot episode of that show was named Pilot, and I thought that was just in reference to how they were trying to find the pilot, and how I thought, I didn't think anything of it until I found that most shows start just with an episode titled Pilot. And then I thought, that's just really clever. But Lost is if we're using Lost as an example, Lost went on a little longer than people probably were interested in. Or if that was what they were intending, they didn't really think things through, so to speak. And I guess in a way, the episodes of some of the later seasons of this show have also lost track of what they're supposed to be, in a way. It's been difficult to really keep up with what I've been saying, even for me. And this guy's got a free air, It's been a while since I've walked over this bridge. I'm walking to Queens now. So I guess it's the opposite of the usual way I would record an episode in the beginning. But there's one thing, it's been a little while, but if there's one thing I've missed, it's how narrow this pedestrian walkway is in relation to the cycling path that's right next to it. Always a good time. It's also just a stark contrast now walking over a bridge of this stature compared to the many bridges I walked over in Europe, where here it's a big bridge. And I mean, granted that the body, or maybe bodies of water that's trying to, I guess it's just one body of water It's the East River split up by Roosevelt Island. It's fairly wide, and I guess with all the big boats they have going here, it makes sense that they'd want to make a big bridge, and it's about a mile long, give or take. Yachting, sorry. But and I guess even the widest rivers I crossed in Europe had low down bridges. A lot of those bridges were built before the big boats of today, or I guess of 100 years ago. A lot of those, then again, a lot of those bridges were fairly new too, but I guess built in older style. There have been a few wars in Europe that have destroyed some of those bridges. But even some of the modern bridges, like in London, they like the Millennium Bridge. It's fairly low down. There's really not that much to it in the way of distance. The Thames isn't the widest river by any stretch. But I guess this is one of the reasons why I felt like seeing the bridges of New York as something to strive to cross. It's not just something that you cross on your day-to-day life. In Europe, it seems like if you had business all over town, you're going to be crossing bridges, like it was nothing. Here, there's there's something, I don't know how to put this into words. It's when you're crossing the Queensboro Bridge, you're going from Manhattan to Queens. It's a totally different ecosystem over there. It's a different culture, different environment. These large bridges transport you to someplace new. The one side of the bridge does not feel like the other. And that's true with all the downtown bridges, with the RFK Bridge. Why did I call it that? That's dumb. I probably call it because there were signs at the foot of this bridge telling people to go, a detour over there. So I call it that. But the Triborough Bridge, pardon my un-New Yorkness there. All these big bridges just have, in the scale, they're just massive. And the fact that, unlike the bridges in Europe where everyone's walked over them, very few people have walked over a bridge not named the Brooklyn Bridge more than once. or rather, the Brooklyn Bridge is the only bridge that people have probably crossed once in their life as a native New Yorker, and then never again because it's awful. Still awful now that they've moved the bike lane off the pedestrian path, but still a pain in the butt to deal with all the tourists. Maybe on an early morning like today, where it's cold, there's some flurries, which is kind of exciting because, to my knowledge, I don't think New York has gotten any snow. South of, Buffalo has gotten snow. By New York, the city. The city hasn't gotten any snow. So just walking out of my apartment building this morning and seeing the flurries, I got a little excited. It's especially when I was in Europe and I was expecting it to be weather like this for 2 weeks, and then I got days in the 60s. Was not prepared for that. But as I was saying, one of the things that just made walking over these bridges so exciting was just the scale, the nature of how they bring you from one place to another, and how it's an exclusive club to have crossed one of these bridges not in a cab. I guess maybe it's more common for cyclists. I don't know. I've certainly passed more cyclists on this bridge than pedestrians. And then am I still as enamored with bridge crossing as I once was? Yeah, I'd say so. I am. I mean, I've kept this up for this long, and it's still fun to do. I mean, I didn't have to do this. I could have taken the subway. There were, yesterday I was feeling kind of tired, but didn't want to not do anything during the day. I was like, oh, maybe I should take the subway over, but I didn't. And I don't know if that's me being cheap, not wanting to pay for the subway, or it's just me wanting to do this. I remember, I think it was sometime last year, or maybe even 2020, and I was feeling down, but then it was one of these early morning walks. Must have been 7:30, 8 a.m. in the morning, around this time, and I just felt happy. It's walking in itself is something that brings me joy, and just moving in general. But it's one of those distinct moments where someone says, "When was the last time you felt joy?" And I know that's not technically the right answer, but that's when I was. That's a distinct moment where I knew for a fact that, I feel good right now. I'm happy. It's season the day, carpe the diem. The sun was just starting to come up, the early morning light, and it just felt nice to be outside. And don't get me wrong, I'm still gonna, even if I'm not pretending to talk on the phone while I walk over a bridge, I'm not gonna be doing that anymore, but I'll still be going on these adventures and treks. I can't imagine that this is going to be the last time. Oh, hello. I just passed a dog who almost came up to me, but the owner was running, so the dog kept moving. That was another regret I had for my whole trip in Europe, is that I saw lots of nice dogs, but didn't get to pet any of them. Very disappointing, but also understandable. No one necessarily wants strange men to be petting their dogs. But I'll still be going on these adventures, on these quests for things, and just, whether they're well. I've said this before, that sometimes I do things because I can, not because I should. I can walk over these bridges and walk 20 miles a day and do all that. Should I? Debatable. There are much more efficient ways to get places. And one of these days I will have to stop moving to this degree for various reasons. But for now, as a single man with no burdens and just a life to live and explore, taking advantage. Could I have done the solo trip through Europe if I had a significant other, or if I had a family, or if I had a dog, or if I had any other responsibilities to keep me tethered? No, I probably couldn't. So I'm taking advantage of this time while I have it. I don't intend to have all of this free time forever. But I'm going to do what I can. And, even with a significant, if I was starting to date someone, I'd try to bring them into the fold. And, I was even, some of my better dates have been walking dates. Some of the not as great ones too, but some good ones. I've walked over some bridges with folks, even some I never even intended in the first place. Where, the best was last year. I went on a first date with someone in downtown Manhattan. They were from Brooklyn, and I was also at the time in the market for paper towel. And Rite Aid had the brand that I wanted. It was the only pharmacy, which is one of the best places to buy it in the city, in a brick and mortar store anyway. That was one of the only places that had the kind I liked. It's Brawny. Now once upon a time you were only able to get paper towel in one size sheet, just a big square. And then I guess maybe 15 years ago or so, it started to become more popular to get the half sheet. And then Brawny has a quarter. The perforations aren't great, but it definitely helps me because I use less. If I am eating an apple and need to wash it, I'll just take a quarter and it works instead of taking a half sheet or trying to do my best to rip the half sheet by myself. The perforations do help, but that's the paper towel I like to get, and Rite Aid's the only place that really sells it, and all the Rite Aids in the city are starting to close. Especially, I think most of the ones in Manhattan have closed now, and some of the only ones that remain are in the outer boroughs. So after the date went okay, was I planning on doing this anyway? I don't remember or recall necessarily, but I ended up walking, and I don't think she was intending to go back home this way either, but I walked over the Manhattan Bridge with her to go to the Rite Aid in Brooklyn Heights. And those sorts of adventures, never got past the first date with that woman, but it's a good story now. Definitely on brand for who I am and what I do. I don't know if this podcast necessarily shaped that about me. I was doing these bridge walks and long walks in general long before I started recording, and I'm fairly certain that if all things were the same, except if I hadn't started this podcast, I'm sure during COVID I would have still gone on many adventures walking around the city. I just would have listened to music while walking over the bridge and not talk to myself. My MP3 player is still kicking. I'd say it still has another couple of years left. Starting to show, it's definitely showing its age at this point. It doesn't always operate as intended. There have been a couple of glitches here or there I've noticed as it's gotten older, but I'm holding on until the year end. And then I don't know. I guess I'll figure that out. One step at a time. An alternate title for this podcast. So what's next for me then? I guess as I was saying, it's just going to be more of the same, minus talking to myself. Like I was saying, I feel like the plot has been lost a bit when it comes to there was never a plot to begin with. I guess value is the right way. One of the things I appreciated the most, or thinking of words is hard. This is why I like writing more than podcasting. Improv was never my greatest strength, despite the classes I took. But I liked how off script this was. And while that's fun for me, it's not necessarily going to lead to the best podcast. And if you've been listening to all of these at this point, kudos to you. I don't know how you did it. They turned from me discussing the finer points of loss to just me bitching about my day. or what was going on in the world. I mean, maybe I'm just undervaluing my opinions. Maybe people want to know how I'm doing personally. And then eventually I will lose the SoundCloud Premium, whatever type of tier lets me keep unlimited episodes posted, and I'm not gonna, or hosted, so to speak. They'll still be there. I think they just get hidden. But I mean, even if you're trying to go from, let's say, if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, you'll only be able to see a certain number of episodes. So I do intend slowly, so at least initially as I've started doing this, it's been a tedious process, but I will, for posterity, post these to YouTube just to get them out there. I've considered hosting elsewhere, and I think at this point just put it on YouTube, call it a day. I'll have to look into see if I heard rumors that YouTube was getting into the podcast space, so I'll have to look in to see if I could just upload recordings and not have to make them into a video file, which is going to be super annoying. But it's something that, I mean, I won't say I worked hard on this. I just worked a long time on it. All these comings and goings over the bridge have to live on somewhere, right? And I did say that this is the penultimate episode. I did intend for this to be the final episode, but for reasons, I promised the last episode, or at least the next numerical episode, to some friends. So it'll be a fun, lighthearted last episode, but this is the retrospective. I'm sure I'll as I've tried to resurrect my personal blog in an attempt to potentially show my worth as a writer, which has been mixed so far. I'm definitely I can feel the rust, and especially with the last thing I posted, it definitely felt like I was posting it more just to get it out there, and not that I really liked it. I even rewrote it once, but still didn't really necessarily think it went anywhere. Kind of like these podcasts. Maybe it's just me. In my old age, I'm losing the plot of myself. But I'll definitely write a postmortem there. That's easy fodder. I guess all the things I used to talk about on here, I'll just write in the blog. With all the fancy words and none of the uhs and ands, and it'll lose a little bit of the ambiance. Or maybe you could just put on some traffic sounds while you read. Especially now as I go through the noisiest part of the bridge with the subway overhead and all the cars and the real close and the e-bikes and whatnot zipping by. I don't even know if this is even working. Is it even on? Yeah, it's on. What is this trying to tell me? Oh, hit my exercise goal. At least for exercise minutes. Definitely got my steps in Europe, that's for sure. I think after all was said and done, it was around 270 miles, give or take. You know, it's estimated from however Apple gets its data from the watch and the phone and whatnot. Oh, wow. Oh, excuse me. They tore down a building over here. They've been tearing down a few of these buildings. Queens Plaza is not what it used to be. When I moved here 7 years ago now. Wild. 7, 8, 9, 0, 1, 2, 3. 7 years ago. 7 years ago, the end of this month. That's how long I've been in the city. and it's been a wild time ever since. On that glorious note, it's time to sign off. Until the next time, whether that's definitely probably going to be some point when I walk over a bridge with some friends, but from all of us at Jacob Walks Over a Bridge, let me be the first and last. Hopefully not the last. I'm probably not the first, but let me be one of the people in your lifetime who have ever told you these words. Good day and good night.